So, welcome and a warm hello to all of you. And sometimes in seeing all the locations where people are sending in their greetings on the chat, I have a very vague imagination of having a globe in front of me and having lines drawn between all the places that are named and take into account all the places that are not named, and it would be quite a net, quite a interconnected net of community of people with similar interests sitting here to meditate and doing a practice which I believe brings out the best in people. And so it's a wonderful act of imagination, and that is the topic for this week, the ways in which imagination can support meditation rather than detract from it. In a certain kind of way, if we don't use our imagination, then we get used by it. But it's not just our own imagination we get used by, but there's a lot of people who are trying to hijack our imagination or plant images and ideas in our mind. Advertisers, politicians, all people who are providing us with imaginary scenarios that sometimes are done very cleverly to really kind of penetrate deep inside of us, and then they remain, and we're used by them or influenced by them. And it's also possible to use our imagination creatively and use it for the purpose of meditation. And it takes wisdom to do that, it takes skill to do it in a way that actually supports the mind to wake up, to be present, to become stable. And then at different levels of stability, of stillness, different forms of imagination might come into play. So that if you hear different instructions for imagination, some of them might not work for you either because you don't have a reference point for them, or because they belong to different degree of stability either than you have, maybe less or more, something. But the Buddha certainly in his teachings are filled with what could be called images of the imagination. Images of similes, ideas, and a basic one for meditation is the idea of sitting as stable as the earth, or sitting as firm as a pillar that it's planted deep in the ground, so it's not going to wobble at all. Or being as calm as a surface of a still lake. And it goes on and on, these kinds of images the Buddha uses, which are tapping into the imagination. And I'll say this later, but part of the purpose of this tapping into the imagination is because the imagination itself is tapped into so many different aspects of our inner life, to our emotional life, our physical life, kinesthetic life, to our motivational life, to our thoughts and memories and things. And so imagination somehow has a capacity to contribute to the unification, the integration that is samadhi, as we're getting more present and more collected in meditation. The process of meditation is a process of collectedness or unification, or some people like to use the language of becoming whole. And imagination can be in the service of that because of what it evokes within us. It's certainly not true for everyone, and people have different ranges of relationship with imagination. But for this week, we're looking at building on the Buddha's use of imagination in order to cultivate stability, but also presence, but also gladness. To have gladness or a certain degree of joy in meditation. So to take an upright meditation posture, and to adjust your posture so it begins to feel stable. One of the advantages of sitting cross-legged is the stability of the legs and the buttocks on your cushion, a broad, wide foundation. Anything that supports you, the weight of your body, can provide a foundation of stability. And to imagine this body that you're sitting in is here like a mountain. Stable, strong, unfazed by the wind that blows by or the clouds that wash over. Imagining that the mind is like a clear, quiet lake, calm, wind not blowing, water still, and the mind is broad and wide, like the wide, broad lake. And imagining the heart is like a full moon, fully exposed, fully open, fully here. The heart shines its light peacefully on all things. And then the Buddha uses an image for tuning into the breathing. That one tunes into breathing like a woodworker does with a chisel on a lathe, carving a piece of wood, or maybe we would say a potter turning clay on a wheel. And to make this contact with something which is moving around in a circle, the cycles of in-breath and out-breath. And this image of someone working a lathe or working clay on a wheel is partly an image of making contact and keeping the contact there. So to take gently with this contact with the body breathing, taking a few long, slow, deep breaths. And as you exhale, maybe like a dam which has opened its doors so water can flow out, to relax your body so there can be a flow of vitality, flow of ease, calmness from the places where you relax. So relaxing the shoulders, relaxing the arms and the elbows, hands. Relaxing the chest, the belly. And breathing easily, maybe naturally. As if the piece of clay now has become smooth and round bowl on the wheel. And it just feels light and smooth and easy to allow the turning of breathing in and breathing out. Your whole body is the bowl that awareness is feeling as you breathe. Breathing in and breathing out. A kind of intimacy with the body breathing. And as you're sitting here, bring to mind, gently, quietly, whatever sense of goodness or gladness that comes from the simplicity of being here, meditating, where you're somehow, what's absent is the busyness of the day, what's absent is the challenges of the day, the crowds of people, driving in traffic. And if you can stay quietly focused on the breathing and not giving in to thoughts of desire, thoughts of ill will, thoughts of anxiety and regrets, thoughts of doubt, this begins to feel like similar to being free of debt or free of an illness, free of oppression, free of being lost in thought, And these ideas of this freedom from these things, for the Buddha, it is meant to be a source of gladness. To take a few moments to appreciate what is not here right now that feels good to have put aside, and which gives you an intimacy and a peacefulness, even if it's mildly so, with here and now and being present. And feeling the goodness of this, maybe being glad to have these moments to be free of these things. Perhaps making a small half smile that maybe supports a gladness or a contentment that's willing to be just here in whatever goodness, whatever pleasure or contentment that is available. As you turn the wheel of breathing in and breathing out, in a sense, smoothing out the bowl of your body, the bowl of clay on the wheel. with the image of a mountain, feeling whatever stability is here in your body, resting in that stability as if you're a mountain. As if your mind is a broad, peaceful lake. Feel whatever ways the mind might be that way, broad and still, even if there are some waves on it. And then whatever way the heart feels like a full moon, exposed, open, floating in the air, in the sky, in space. Feel that luminosity and freedom of the heart. And the breathing like a gentle breeze that blows here and there through the body, through the mind, through the heart. Connecting you to stability and stillness. And freedom of the heart. And staying centered here in this mountain-like body, still mind and open heart. Open the awareness up out into the world, as if the stability spreads out from the place you're sitting out across the surface of the lands. As if a peaceful stillness spreads from your mind out across the air and across the seas. And as if the freedom and luminosity of the full moon heart shines all over the globe. And you, for a few moments, undisturbed by the suffering of the world. But in this undisturbed way, Perhaps you can tap into a heartfelt wish of compassion, care, wish for the welfare of all beings. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free of suffering. May all beings be safe from all forms of harm, physical, mental, emotional. May all beings be peaceful, sharing as we share our peacefulness with them. And may all beings be free, as we do not limit them, box them in with our ideas and desires, expectations. May the benefit of this meditation together spread out into the world for the welfare and benefit of all beings. And may it do so through our deeds of body, speech, and mind. May today be a day for spreading, for caring for the welfare of others. So there has been a strong tendency in the West, I think, to present the Buddha's teachings in a fairly rational way, and to emphasize the empirical nature of it, and it's really about seeing things as they are in a direct way, and in doing so, sometimes we've left behind or go unnoticed the tremendous degree in which the Buddha and the early Buddhist tradition is using using imagination, using creativity of images and ideas and imagination to support the teachings, but not just the teachings, but to provide us with a different reference point for both the teachings and the practice than simply ideas, rational ideas, logical ideas. That the Buddha uses lots of similes, lots of poetry, lots of images, lots of little stories, all of which touch into other dimensions of our inner life than our rational cognitive understanding. And it touches into our emotional life, our kinesthetic life, our motivational life, that part of it can be inspired, can be gladdened. It ties into our memory and our associations, and so all these capacity and thinking as well. All these different faculties that we have get touched, get awakened, get somehow brought into the field of our Dharma relationship, a Dharma practice. And this contributes to the sense of unification that is samadhi. Cultivating samadhi, developing samadhi is really an important part. In fact, the Buddha said that to see things as they are cultivates samadhi. And samadhi is unification. And unification is the bringing together of all our faculties together in a kind of whole working, a dynamic working of the whole, to really be in harmony, that everything's in harmony. So using the imagination is a means to evoke that and elicit that in support of the meditation practice or support of this freedom. And it is, so it has to be done, of course, carefully. It can be overdone. And certainly people use their imagination for all kinds of things which are not healthy or appropriate for Dharma practice. To spend a lot of time in fantasy and having a feeling of, the delusions of grandeur, of delusions of great pleasure, or just kind of getting lost in the pleasure of fantasies and imagination, or getting lost in the fantasies of conflict and war and that we have towards with other people. All kinds of things, really takes us away from this practice. And but the imagination that connects us to it, we have to get a feel for what does it really connect? Does it really help us be more settled, more present for our experience? And it's using the imagination to eventually go beyond the imagination. It's kind of a stepping stone. And the kind of images that the Buddha seems to use tend not to be stories, or it's not whole ongoing sagas that we're imagining. They tend to be very simple, like that of a mountain or the earth or a lake. So it's not like a story of things. It's just kind of an image, and sometimes it's a dynamic image, like the image of an underwater fount from in a lake, the underwater spring that's spreading goodness throughout the body. It's not a story. It's just kind of a dynamic image of what's happening. Another image that I love, I'll do this tomorrow, some of these, but so this integration process, and as I said before, if we don't use our imagination, it's all too easy that our imagination gets used by others. We internalize the images and imagination that advertisements, commercials, politicians, other people make up. And then we internalize them in a way sometimes they're not beneficial for us. Actually, it can be quite detrimental. Imagining all kinds of terrible things that are happening in the world that just kind of spiral us down and in a way that's not helpful. So it's not fantasy. It's not to avoid or deny what's going on, run away from life as it actually is, that we use imagination in Buddhism. But it's with care, but knowing how we do it so it really helps us, supports us to be present. If it doesn't help us to be present, there's no need to use it. And it isn't like you're better Buddhist if you use your imagination. But it is available to us, support us to get kind of more focused. And one of the ways that the Buddha talks about developing gladness in meditation, and gladness that leads to joy, joy that leads to tranquility, tranquility leads to happiness, happiness that leads to samadhi, is to appreciate what's absent as we sit and meditate. And in the most common thing that the Buddha emphasizes is the absence of the hindrances. So when people are meditators, they are often contending with their hindrances, the hindrance of desire, aversion, lethargy and resistance, agitation and regrets, remorse, and doubt. These can be very strong, very compelling hooks in the mind to be caught up in thinking about these and involved in these. And we can get lost in desire fantasies and aversion fantasies and caught up in resistance and our regrets and anxieties. We really kind of get lost in these universes that these can create for us. And so as we settle down in meditation, as we kind of start getting more focused, more relaxed, more settled, and start letting go of the force of preoccupation, the bait of all these kinds of thoughts that take us away from the present moment. And we're able to sit a little bit more and more here in the present moment. There comes a time when the hindrances have abated, that they're not so strong anymore, and it becomes relatively easy just to stay here. And the image I used the other day of a bowl, large bowl, I mean, it's, huge, maybe a 5-foot diameter bowl that they have in some kind of children's museums, and you put a marble into the top, you drop a marble down the edge, and that marble will move this way and that way, and until the momentum slows down, and then eventually it falls through a hole at the bottom of the bowl, or rests at the bottom of the bowl. But if you lean into the bowl and keep pushing the marble, it keeps going and going and going. So to be caught in the hindrances is to keep the marble spinning, but to finally settle down and let the marbles all settle at the bottom of the bowl and rest. You can feel in meditation so good, the mind just here. So at this point, the Buddha talks about having gladness, that one is no longer caught, no longer hijacked by the mind, no longer enslaved by the mind, because the mind just pulls us away and has a mind of its own, and we're just pulled along, and we kind of lose a kind of freedom in the process. And so to feel the gladness, be glad about this. And here is where the Buddha teaches this as an act of imagination, and a particular word that he uses that's translating as imagination here can be visualization. And it has the word seeing, anupassana, in it, and it's some anupassana with seeing. But it's not seeing through the physical eye, but rather through the mental eye of imagination. And so he gives 5 similes for being free of the hindrances, to be really here, their absence. And they are a person in debt who has become free of debt, a person who's terribly sick, who is no longer sick, a person who's in prison and bondage in prison. So even not just in prison, but in bondage, tied down, who has become freed from prison. A person who is enslaved, who has become freed of slavery. And a person who has wandered in the desert for a long time, dangerous desert, who has come out to the other side and is no longer lost, free of wandering in the desert. And so Buddha gives these 5 similes for being free of the hindrances. And the reason for these similes is to give a reference point for something what people would celebrate, just be so happy, be so relieving, so joyful to be out of prison, to be out of sickness and all these things. Unless we don't remember that we're free of those things. If we just, like we're free of prison, we just go on to the next preoccupation and concern. But to take time, not just to keep going back to the breath and back to the breath when we're present, but take time to really appreciate the goodness or the well-being or the delight that being free of the hindrances are, being focused and present, so that the goodness of that spreads through the body or opens up more widely or brings a kind of a gladness that is part of this integration process, this unification process, that we're beginning to not just keep doing the laser focus of the mind, if we ever did it that way, and just kind of like staying focused, but there's a kind of a mellowing and opening and settling experience of just softening here that the gladness can give birth to. And as we allow this gladness to, this joy, space for it, we don't pump it up strongly. It's just kind of just a natural, hopefully a natural kind of joy or gladness that is available when we take time to feel the goodness of this, what's happening in meditation. Then that is what allows the growth then of joy and happiness that is on the way to a strong samadhi. So, so another talk on the use of imagination, and it takes some wisdom to know what kind of imagination when, what to use maybe when we first sit down, what to use when the hindrances have abated, but and not to make a big project of it, but to know this available to us, and it's like a little aid, a little quiet support that is meant to support us to be inspired to stay in the present moment and to feel the goodness, the well-being that comes when we really settle down in meditation. We're allowed to be present here and now. We're allowed to enjoy it. And this is the stepping stone for going deeper and in some ways in a more powerful way into this 16 steps of Anapanasati, which we'll be coming to. And but for now, I'm just trying to introduce you to this territory of imagination, which can come into play when we start feeling settled in meditation that supports the further settling and absorption in the very practice we're doing. So thank you, and I look forward to tomorrow.